The invisible prison. There is a prison most people will never see. It has no bars, no guards, no locked doors, yet millions of people live inside it every day. The strange thing is, the prison isn't built from concrete. It's built from belief. Not beliefs about politics, not beliefs about religion, but beliefs about yourself. The quiet sentences you repeat in your mind. I'm not disciplined. I've never been consistent. I always quit things. I'm just not that type of person. At first they sound harmless, almost casual. But these beliefs slowly become rules your brain follows. And once a belief becomes a rule, your behavior begins to obey it. This is why so many people chase discipline but never find it. They download productivity apps. They watch motivational videos. They make ambitious plans every Sunday night. And yet, by Wednesday, the plan is gone. Not because they're lazy, not because they lack potential, but because deep down, they believe something that sabotages them. Something invisible, a limiting belief. Today we're going to uncover something most people never realize. Your lack of discipline may not be a motivation problem. It may be a belief problem. And until those beliefs change, discipline will always feel impossible. But once they do, discipline stops feeling like torture. It becomes something far more powerful. Identity. Let's break this down. Part 1, the lie. Most people believe about discipline. Most people think discipline is about force. Forcing yourself to wake up early. Forcing yourself to work harder. Forcing yourself to resist distractions. They imagine discipline like a soldier marching through pain. But here's the truth nobody talks about. The most disciplined people in the world aren't forcing themselves nearly as much as you think. Why? Because their behavior matches their identity. They don't wake up thinking, I guess I should force myself to work out. They think, of course I'm working out. That's who I am. Discipline becomes easier when it aligns with your self-image. But here's the problem. If your identity says, I'm someone who quits, I'm someone who struggles, I'm someone who lacks discipline, then every time you try to change your behavior, your brain pushes back. Not because it's lazy, but because your brain wants consistency between identity and action. Psychologists call this identity congruence. Your mind constantly tries to behave in ways that confirm what it already believes about you, which means something powerful happens. If you believe you are undisciplined, your brain will unconsciously create situations that prove it. You'll procrastinate. You'll delay. You'll break promises to yourself, not intentionally, but automatically, because every action reinforces the story you believe about yourself. And once that story becomes strong enough, it becomes your reality. This is why two people can read the same book, watch the same motivational video, have the same opportunity, yet one person transforms their life, and the other changes nothing. The difference isn't knowledge, it's belief. Part 2. How limiting beliefs are formed. The most dangerous beliefs are the ones you never question, because they feel like facts. But most limiting beliefs weren't born from facts. They were born from moments. Moments in childhood, moments in school, moments in failure. Maybe when you were young, someone told you, you're lazy. You never finish anything. You're not disciplined like your brother. Maybe you tried something difficult once and failed. Maybe you tried building a habit and quit after a week, and your brain made a quiet conclusion. This must mean something about who I am. The mind loves patterns, even when the pattern comes from one experience. A child fails a test once. Suddenly they believe they're bad at school. Someone struggles with fitness. Now they believe they're not athletic. Someone breaks a habit. Now they believe they lack discipline. But what if that belief was simply a misinterpretation? What if the failure didn't define you? but your brain decided it did. And over time, the belief repeated itself. Every time you quit something, your brain said, "See? I knew it." Every time you struggled, your brain said, "This proves it." Until eventually, the belief became part of your identity. And identity is powerful because once you believe something about yourself long enough, you start protecting it, even when it's hurting you. Part 3. The self-sabotage loop. Let's talk about something that frustrates millions of people. Self-sabotage. You set a goal, you feel motivated, you start strong, and then something happens. You skip one day, then two. Then the habit disappears. Afterward, you feel frustrated. You say things like, "Why do I always do this? I knew I wouldn't stick with it. I guess I just don't have discipline." But what if that pattern isn't random? What if it's actually predictable? Here's the hidden loop. First, you try to build discipline. Second, your subconscious identity disagrees with that behavior. Third, your brain creates resistance, procrastination, distraction, fatigue. Eventually, you break the habit. Then something dangerous happens. The failure confirms the belief. I knew it. I can't stay disciplined. The belief grows stronger, and the next time you try again, the resistance becomes even stronger. This is how people get trapped in years of frustration, because they keep trying to change behavior without changing belief. But once belief changes, behavior follows naturally. Part 4. Discipline is an identity, not a skill. Many people treat discipline like a skill you either have or don't, but discipline is actually an identity you adopt. Think about someone who identifies as a runner. They don't debate whether they should run. They run because that's who they are. Someone who identifies as a writer writes, even when they don't feel inspired. Someone who identifies as disciplined acts disciplined, even when motivation disappears. This is the secret. The most powerful habits are identity-based, not motivation-based. Motivation fades, identity remains. So the real question becomes, who do you believe you are? Because whatever answer you give, your life will start proving it. Part 5. The stories you tell yourself. Your brain is constantly narrating your life, and the story you tell yourself determines what you become. Some people live by stories like, "I always find a way. I keep promises to myself. I do hard things." Other people live by stories like, "I always struggle. I can't stay consistent. I'll probably quit eventually." The scary part? Your brain listens to these stories like commands, not opinions, commands. If your internal story says, "I always quit," your brain will create behaviors that fulfill that script. But if your story becomes, "I'm someone who follows through," something shifts. Now quitting creates discomfort because it violates the identity. This is why elite performers guard their internal story carefully, because the story becomes the blueprint for behavior. Part 6. How to destroy limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs feel permanent, but they aren't. They're simply thoughts repeated long enough to feel true. And anything built through repetition can be dismantled the same way. Here's the first step. Question the belief. Most people never do this. They accept beliefs automatically. But ask yourself, where did this belief come from? Was it one failure? One comment from someone else? One bad experience? Is that enough evidence to define your entire identity? Probably not. Second step, look for counter evidence. Your brain loves confirmation bias. It remembers moments that support the belief and ignores moments that contradict it. But if you look carefully, you'll find evidence that the belief isn't entirely true. Moments when you showed discipline, moments when you followed through, moments when you pushed past resistance. Those moments matter because they reveal something important. The belief isn't reality, it's just a narrative, and narratives can change. Part 7. Building a new identity. If discipline is identity-based, then the goal isn't to force discipline. The goal is to become someone who is disciplined. An identity doesn't change overnight. It changes through proof, small proof, repeated proof. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your identity shifts slightly. Every time you show up when you didn't feel like it, your identity strengthens. Every time you choose effort over comfort, your brain records evidence. Eventually, something powerful happens. Your mind begins updating the story. Maybe you're not someone who quits. Maybe you're someone who's learning consistency. Maybe discipline isn't impossible. Maybe it's becoming part of who you are. And once that shift begins, momentum builds. Part 8. The power of small promises. Most people sabotage their discipline by starting too big. They create massive routines. Wake up at 5 a.m., work out for an hour, read 50 pages, meditate, journal, cold shower, perfect morning routine. But when the routine collapses, the brain interprets it as another identity failure. See? I couldn't do it. Instead, start smaller than your ego wants. One promise, one action, one proof. Maybe it's 5 minutes of work, 10 push-ups, writing one paragraph, and the size doesn't matter. The promise does. Because every completed promise builds identity evidence. And identity evidence compounds, just like interest. Part 9. Discipline is built in silence. Something else happens when your beliefs begin changing. You stop needing constant motivation. You stop chasing inspiration. You stop waiting to feel ready. You simply begin doing the work. Quietly, consistently, without drama. This is what real discipline looks like. Not hype, not intensity, just repetition, day after day. Because discipline is rarely built in heroic moments. It's built in ordinary ones. The quiet decision to show up again and again and again. Part 10. The moment everything changes. There is a moment many disciplined people experience. It doesn't happen on day 1 or week 1, but eventually something shifts. You keep a promise you normally would have broken. Then you do it again the next day, then again the next week. And suddenly your brain asks a new question. What if I actually am disciplined? That moment is powerful because identity begins updating. And once identity updates, your actions begin reinforcing the new story. Discipline stops feeling like punishment. It starts feeling natural. Breaking the prison. Remember the invisible prison we talked about earlier? The one built from belief. Here's the truth. The door has been unlocked the entire time. But walking out requires one decision. You must stop believing the old story. The story that says, I can't. I'm not disciplined. I always quit. Because those sentences aren't facts. They're habits, mental habits, and habits can change. So the next time your brain whispers that old story, pause, question it. Then take one disciplined action anyway. Small, quiet, intentional. Because every action becomes evidence, and evidence reshapes belief. Eventually, the identity changes. And when identity changes, your life changes with it. Not overnight, but permanently. So ask yourself one question, not, how do I become disciplined? But something far more powerful. Who do I believe I am? Because once that answer changes, everything else will follow.